Okay, sorry, my phone cut off in the middle of that. Um, in the middle of that. So again, I'm reading from My Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolte Taylor. This is the continuation of the chapter 7, Bare to the Bone, that I was just reading. So without a language center telling me I am Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, I am a neuroanatomist, I live at this address and can be reached at this phone number, I felt no obligation to being her anymore. It was truly a bizarre shift in perception. But without her emotional circuitry reminding me of her likes and dislikes, or her ego center reminding me about her patterns of critical judgment, I didn't think like her anymore. From a practical perspective, considering the amount of biological damage, being her again wasn't even an option. In my mind, in my new perspective, that Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor died that morning and no longer existed. Now that I didn't know her life, her relationships, successes, and mistakes, I was no longer bound to her decisions or self-induced limitations. And again, guys, this is us. This is a perfect relation to what this healing is like, is we are crushing that ego. We are killing that old man, that old woman. We are killing that program, that mold, that that clay that got molded into that character that society molded us into to fit into this grand scheme of things. And we are reclaiming our essence and our true authentic self and realizing that we are so much more than that character. We are so much more than that, those experiences that we've related to and those programmings and habits that we've related to our whole life, and that we are able to start fresh and start new. It's a new beginning. It's never too late. You can start at any time. But, as she relates in through this story, it's scary. It's the unknown. It's giving yourself over to yourself, to your true authentic self, and trusting and loving that aspect of yourself and desiring to be that person and not this fake ego that we've, fed our whole lives. Although I experienced enormous grief for the death of my left hemisphere consciousness and the woman I had been, I concurrently felt tremendous grief, tremendous relief. That Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor had grown up with lots of anger and a lifetime of emotional baggage that must have required a lot of energy to sustain. That's what I'm talking about, all that trauma and abuse. Like that unhealed, unfaced trauma and abuse carried on your back and in your mind, in the back of your mind, and in your subconscious, like baggage. And the farther we get in life and the more experiences that we have, and we were taught never to talk through or to face these things, or that they were even real. We were taught that when we complain or we say these things hurt us, that, oh, you just need to man up. Oh, you just need to do what you need to do. Oh, those things are just required. That's part of living. That's part of life. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Those are all matrix narratives that keep us enslaved instead of doing the true healing. We are, these are the experts that tell us these things, they're towing the line for this matrix. They're towing the line for our enslavement and keeping us entrapped instead of, using our reasoning to figure out, hey, wait a minute, this shit isn't right. This isn't how we're supposed to live. This isn't our natural state of being. This isn't conducive to this spirit and this soul encompassed in this physical avatar. This biological being is not supposed to be living like this. So it's a lifetime of emotional baggage that requires a lot of energy to sustain. And again, I think that's part of why we age so quickly, why we are in so much pain, and why we are, find these addictions, because this is such an unnormal. It's not a normal. It's such a toxic environment that we're in, that we've created. The society and culture is so extremely toxic, which means poisonous. It's so poisonous to the natural organic way of being in this biological system. So she says, Jill Bolte Taylor, she was passionate about her work and her advocacy. She was attached to that ego. She was intensely committed to living a dynamic life. But despite her likable and perhaps even admirable characteristics, in my present form, I had not inherited her fundamental hostility. So she didn't have that hostileness. She didn't have that, her back to the wall and, that survivalist, caged cat, caged rat, grrr, type of thing. It was gone. All that programming, those habits, and that state of fear that was induced in her as a child, fighting for survival and doing what she had to do. Her mom shoving poisonous food in her face, and the chaos that is outside of us in this that you're born into. She no longer associated with any of that. I had forgotten about my brother and his illness. By the way, her brother was diagnosed schizophrenic. So yeah, just, to keep that in mind. I had forgotten about my parents and their divorce. I had forgotten about my job and all the things in my life that brought me stress. And with this obliteration of memories, I felt both relief and joy. I had spent a lifetime of 37 years being enthusiastically committed to doing lots of stuff at a very fast pace. On this special day, on this special day, the day of her stroke, I learned the meaning of simply being. No longer the requirement of having to go, 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 go. Keep up, keep up, keep up, keep up. Don't stop, don't slow down. If you slow down, the wheels of this mechanism of slavery is going to crush you and just leave you behind like you never existed. That's gone. When you do this healing, when you go through these traumatic brain injuries and these traumatic experiences, and you're brought and thrown into that authentic self, it's a special day. You learn the meaning of simply being, that you are whole, that you are powerful. You realize how special you and how truly powerful and unbelievably, unimaginatively special we truly are when you are taken out of that ego in the whole narration of your life. All the bullshit, all the drama no longer matters. When I lost my left hemisphere and its language centers, I also lost the clock that would break my moments into consecutive brief instances. So the whole construct of time is gone. Time is, again, just like language that enslaves us, time enslaves us. This whole construct of time is nothing but an enslavement, a prison for us. Instead of having my moments prematurely stunted, they became open-ended, and I felt no rush to do anything. Like walking along the beach or just hanging out in the beauty of nature, I shifted from the doing consciousness of my left brain to the being consciousness of my right brain. I morphed from feeling small and isolated to feeling enormous and expansive. I stopped thinking in language and shifted to taking new pictures of what was going on in the present moment. I was not capable of deliberating about past or future related ideas because those cells were incapacitated. All I could perceive was right here, right now, and it was beautiful. My entire self-concept shifted as I no longer perceived myself as a solid, an entity with boundaries that separated me from the entities around me. She felt whole again. She felt connected to everything. I understood that at the most elementary level, I am a fluid. Of course I am a fluid. Everything around us, about us, among us, within us, and between us is made up of atoms and molecules vibrating in space. Although the ego center of our language center prefers defining ourself as individual and solid, most of us are aware that we are made up of trillions of cells, gallons of water, and ultimately everything about us exists in a constant and dynamic state of activity. My left hemisphere had been trained to perceive myself as a solid, separate from others. Now, released from that restrictive circuitry, my right hemisphere relished in its attachment to the eternal flow. I was no longer isolated and alone. My soul was as big as the universe and frolicked with glee in a boundless sea. So I just want to repeat this one again. Although the ego center of our language center prefers defining ourself as individual and solid, most of us are aware that we are made up of trillions of cells, gallons of water, and ultimately everything about us exists in a constant and dynamic state of activity. For many of us, thinking about ourselves as fluid or with souls as big as the universe, connected to the energy flow of all of that is, slips us out just beyond our comfort zone. But without the judgment of my left brain saying that I am a solid, my perception of myself returned to this natural state of fluidity. So it's that left brain that where the ego is rooted, that is fed through the indoctrination and propaganda and abusive and traumatic programming, right? Without that states that you're a solid, that everything is just right here, that you're in your box, that this box is this box. If you want this, then you got to achieve and earn to get into that box. And it's all solid, right? Without that, the perception of herself returned to the natural state of fluidity and how easy and how peace and calm and safe everything is. Clearly, we are each trillions upon trillions of particles in soft vibration. We exist as fluid-filled sacs in a fluid world where everything exists in motion. Different entities are composed of different densities of molecules, but ultimately every pixel is made up of electrons, protons, and neutrons performing a delicate dance. Every pixel, including every iota of you and me, and every pixel of space, seemingly in between, is atomic matter and energy. My eyes could no longer perceive things as things that were separate from one another. Instead, the energy of everything blended together. My visual processing was no longer normal. I compare this pixelated perspective to Impressionist pointillism paintings. I was consciously alert, and my perception was that I was in the flow. Everything in my visual world blended together, and with every pixel radiating energy, we all flowed en masse together as one. It was impossible for me to distinguish the physical boundaries between objects because everything radiated with similar energy. It's probably comparable to when people take off their glasses or put eye drops into their eyes. The edges become softer. In this state of mind, I could not perceive three-dimensionally. Nothing stood out as being closer or farther away. If there was a person standing in a doorway, I could not distinguish their presence until they moved. It took activity for me to know that I should pay special attention to any particular patch of molecules. In addition, color did not register to my brain as color. I simply couldn't distinguish it. Prior to this morning, when I had experienced myself as a solid, I had possessed the ability to experience loss, either physical loss via death or injury, or emotional loss through heartache. But in this shifted perception, it was impossible for me to perceive either physical or emotional loss because I was not capable of experiencing separation or individuality. Despite my neurological trauma, an unforgettable sense of peace pervaded my entire being, and I felt calm. Although I rejoiced in my perception of connection to all that is, I shuddered at the awareness that I was no longer a normal human being. How on earth would I exist as a member of the human race with this heightened perception that we are each a part of it all, and that the life force energy within us, each of us, contains the power of the universe? Right? So it's scary. Like you get pushed into this awareness, and you realize that how are you going to exist inside of that awareness, but being stuck in this physical avatar that requires you to fit into these social constructs and molded into these environmental and cultural structures, right? How on earth do you exist like that? Knowing that, with that awareness that we are so much more than that. You have to give up that complete wholeness and that complete being of amazing potential in order to fit into these small boxes of social standards and constructs. How could I fit in with our society when I walk the earth with no fear? So fear is a construct. Fear is a lack. Fear is lack, and we don't lack. Our innate natural state of being lacks nothing. So therefore, there's no place for fear. Fear is a construct that is beaten into us, that is put on us, that is burdened and imposed and impressed onto us, imbued into us. I was, by anyone's standards, no longer normal. What is normal? Normal is a construct. Normal is the narrative that they have placed down for us. Normal is the illusion of normal. Normal is the manipulation of what is natural. In my own unique way, I had become severely mentally ill, and this is all what mental illness is by definition in this society. Mental illness is simply not fitting in or going along with or refusing to follow orders of this unnatural, poisonous, toxic social construct and narrative that's been laid out for us. That's all mental illness is. And I must say, there was both freedom and challenge for me in recognizing that our perception of the external world and our relationship to it is a product of our neurological circuitry. For all those years of my life, I really had been a figment of my own imagination. We are living in our own construct, in our own imagination, this sick, destructive, poisonous system in which we live is all a construct and is all a fake illusion of what is natural and pure and whole and organic to our biological beings. This system from birth has programmed us to fit into this construct, this grand scheme, this play. When the timekeeper in my left hemisphere shut down, the natural temporal cadence of my life slowed to the pace of a snail. As my perception of time shifted, I fell out of sync with the beehive that bustled around me. My consciousness drifted into a time warp, rendering me incapable of communicating or functioning at either the accustomed or acceptable pace of social exchange. I now existed in a world between worlds. I could no longer relate to people outside of me, and yet my life had not been extinguished. I was not only an oddity to those around me, but on the inside, I was an oddity to myself. This is exactly what it feels like when you go through this healing process and you detach from all this horse shit. You realize that you're so much more. Your spirit and your essence encompasses so much more, but you're stuck inside of this small physical avatar, in that you still have to move around and survive in this constructed reality. So it's really a mind fuck. you're like, what the fuck? What is going on? Because you realize everything you've ever known your whole life is a lie, and it's all an illusion, and it's all just a manipulation of reality and truth. And so then now you're sitting here with the truth, with the true truth, knowing that you've always known, and then in encompassing that and in accepting and living that. And it's an oddity. It's strange. I felt so detached from my ability to move my body with any oomph that I truly believed I would never be able to get this collection of cells to perform again. Wasn't it interesting that although I could not walk or talk, understand language, read or write, or even roll my body over, I knew that I was okay? Isn't that interesting that even though she wasn't able to relate like a normal person, she's still living in that spirit, in the essence, she still knew she was okay, because that is our natural state of being, knowing that we're okay. And that's why when we were born, all our parents' responsibility to us was to give us a safe space, to recognize and accept us for the whole, intelligent, innate, capable person that we were as a child, as a baby, and nurture that being. And instead, they programmed us, and as like agents of the state, abusive agents of the state, they programmed us into being able to fit into this nasty, disgusting, poisonous society. Our parents had the opportunity to stop the madness, to stop the insanity. Our parents had the opportunity to right the wrongs, to break this wheel of enslavement, this gerbil, this hamster wheel of enslavement that they were placed on. They had the opportunity, but instead they, through their traumatic survival programming that they're still on, they propagated and perpetrated and perpetuated the same fucking enslavement and slavery that they were placed under. That's why this world is so fucked up, because we have generations of people telling each other that they love each other, that placed each other under this abuse. The now offline intellectual mind of my left hemisphere no longer inhibited my innate awareness that I was the miraculous power of life. I knew I was different now, but never once did my right mind indicate that I was less than what I had been before. I was simply a being of light radiating life into the world, and that is our natural state of being. I was simply a being of light radiating life into the world. Regardless of whether or not I had a body or brain that could connect me to the world of others, I saw myself as a cellular masterpiece. In the absence of my left hemisphere's negative judgment, I perceived myself as perfect, whole, and beautiful, just the way I was. And that is our natural state of being. That is how we came into this world, with that knowing, and that wholeness and natural state of being was crushed, and our brain was thrown into survival mechanism, into its survival instinct. And that is where we have lived our whole lives, in that survival instinct, that fight or flight mode, building and feeding a false self, an ego, our whole lives in order to survive in this dog-eat-dog world. You may be wondering how it is that I still remember everything that happened. I remind you that although I was mentally disabled, right, I was not unconscious. Our consciousness is created by numerous programs that are running at the same time. Each program adds a new dimension to our ability to perceive things in the three-dimensional world. Although I had lost my left hemisphere consciousness, containing my ego center, and ability to see myself as a single and solid entity separate from you, I retained both the consciousness of my right mind and the consciousness of the cells making up my body. Although one set of programs was no longer functioning, the one that reminded me moment by moment of who I was and where I lived, etc., the other parts of me remained alert and continued processing instantaneous information. So just because we don't have a degree, just because we don't know who the newest celebrity is and what all the stats is of our sports team from our city and who the politicians are and what they're debating at the moment and what's going on in the whole world. Just because we don't know that doesn't mean we're stupid. All that shit is superfluous. That's all part of an elusive narrative that was set up to keep us on the hamster wheel and not allow us to remember who we actually are in our presence in this world. In the absence of my traditional left hemispheric domination over my right mind, other parts of my brain emerged. Programs that had been inhibited were now free to run, and I was no longer fettered to my previous interpretation of perception. With this shift away from my left hemisphere consciousness and the character that I had been, my right hemisphere character emerged with new insight. To hear others tell the story, however, I was quite a mess that day. I was like a newborn, unable to make sense of the sensory stimulation in the physical space around me. It was obvious that I perceived incoming stimulation as painful. Sound streaming in through my ears blasted my brain senseless, so that when people spoke, I could not distinguish their voices from the underlying clatter of the environment. From my perspective, everyone clamored en masse and resonated like a discordant pack of restless animals. Inside my head, I felt as though my ears were no longer tightly connected to my brain, and I sensed that important information was seeping out between the cracks. I wanted to communicate. Yelling louder does not help me understand you any better. Don't be afraid of me. Come closer to me. Bring me your gentle spirit. So this is what she wanted to communicate that she was unable to communicate to the doctors and the specialists and all the experts that were buzzing her around her and speaking loud and poking and prodding at her and doing all their stupid ass, medical bullshit that they do to you in a hospital. This is what she was trying to communicate to them. Please speak more slowly. Enunciate more clearly. Again, please try again. Slow down. Be kind to me. Be a safe place for me. These are the same things that we try to communicate as babies to our parents when our parents are stressed out and they are, putting us in front of a TV and they're screaming and they're yelling and they're having their emotional ups and downs and they're living in this chaotic world and trying to keep up with everything. This is the same exact thing. Be a safe place for me. See that I'm a wounded animal, not a stupid animal. I am vulnerable and confused. Whatever my age, whatever my credentials, reach for me. Respect me. I am in here. Come find me. Earlier that morning, I never entertained the possibility that I was orchestrating my rescue so that I would live out the rest of my days completely disabled. Yet at the core of my being, my consciousness... Hold on, let me start that again. Earlier that morning, I never entertained the possibility that I was orchestrating my rescue so that I would live out the rest of my days completely disabled. Yet at the core of my being, my conscious mind felt so detached from my physical body that I sincerely believed I would never be able to fit the energy of me back inside this skin, nor ever be able to re-engage the intricate networks of my body's cellular and molecular tapestry. Again, once you experience and realize and encompass that authentic self and you go into that fullness of that spirit and that soul, it's almost incomprehensible of how we fit that into this physical avatar. I felt suspended between two worlds, caught between two perfectly opposite planes of reality. For me, hell existed inside the pain of this wounded body as it failed miserably in any attempt to interact with the external world, while heaven existed in a consciousness that soared in eternal bliss. And yet, somewhere deep within me, there was a jubilant being, thrilled that I had survived. This relates to our healing, guys.